Cherry Street dead-ended, and Hank said 100.5 short. The address is obviously approximate further in the LaGuardia houses. It's past this big tree, protected inside this fence. I think someone's kidding, although the tree does deserve respect. The tree appeared to belong to the school on our left that had the scattered paraphernalia of unfinished work strewn around. Planks of wood and buckets not even under a tarp. Nonetheless, we contributed to the disorder by slipping the bikes through a hole in the fence so Hank could stand and deliberate over the big tree. Impressed with the site's potential, he admired the thick tree's years of dedicated growth. Nice tree. Great location for winter-bound classes to talk under in the vibrancy of spring, he said. Regretfully, I returned just a few years later to see the tree was paved over to put up a parking lot. And not only that, the space is small, as if done just for a very few prestigious cars. When what happened dawned on me, it was as if feeling Hank was punched in the gut. Anyway, after the tree, we followed the sidewalk through the LaGuardia houses. Hank visualizing Cherry Street's era of snugly attached buildings, home to assorted tall tales from this vast city's depths. When Hammer grew up here, urchins and landlords were really at odds over what the economy could afford to enforce. In contrast, our era's identically tall structures are at calculated angles with these common areas in between, similar to small parks with tall walls, plus more light than the century before could afford, yet still dim compared to the illumination we saw from the Brooklyn Bridge. A light must be out somewhere. And less light could have been why we were easily surprised while approaching a cement bench that was approximately 406 Cherry Street. From an interior corner shadow, a nod greeted us, with the words, "Want something," carrying an undertone of suspicion. Hank even smiled. "No thanks, we're fine." But the young man's front was already up, as if just passing on his way. The bikes were laid, and Hank spoke only after his frown stared off far enough. He said, "I don't want to blindly promote the idea illegal drug use is victimless, but because I love this country and know everyone in it appreciates this nation to some extent, the victimless cliché requires some more insight than rules are just made to be broken. We're not deep enough in the debate, preferring that evil empires are doomed. Illegal conspiracies sprout one after another, until supposedly someday the public will mature and we'll all pay attention to the government's movie. Then everything will be okay if we just not feed the ruthlessness. In the meantime, the most desperate, unredeemable criminals fill the drug vacuum, replacing the easily defeated lifestyle political prisoners from earlier rounds. So since life is lived out in stages, what level of combatant do you think finally wins this tragic war? Steroidally deranged enforcers or whacked out of their riddled minds deviants, driven by kicks and vulgar thrills? Where we already are. Crime should be over. This adversarial mess is twisted. The fine society based on revenge, the bitter versus righteous. We need to pick apart how money is the heart of every issue. What do you think of this adjustment, Mr. Trainer? I think it's disgusting. Criminal justice finances itself. Instead of tickets when people speed or illegally parked, take their cars. Let the inconvenience of getting them back cause them to follow the law. Fines are an excuse to break the law. Taxes should pay for criminal justice. That's it. I said outlandish. Hank said, "Yes, I agree. Expanding the towing service system pushes the feasible. He snickered. So now I'll use the politicians' tactic of skirting the issue, using their lawyers' rule of only asking questions when they know the answer. Where are we? I said 406 Cherry. He snickered again. Yeah, Dr. Hammer was born right here in the family's apartment. May 21st, 1898. According to the doctor's book, this development replaced the decrepit tenement situation Hammer was born in. Exposed, or rather popularized, by photographer Jacob Riis, because everyone knew what poverty was, but it was less easy to lie about with pictures going around. According to Dr. Hammer, I asked. Hank gleamed. My source for his birth is his last autobiography. I'm not the one who sprinkled grains of salt on everything he said. Looking into his life these last months, there's one theory I've grown fond of. Hammer had auto/biographies written about himself in several areas to remain current. Might have been overcompensation for his fear from the curious. Or maybe at least 4 books happen when you live that long and get those extra years. What do you know? What do you know? I said speculation. Hank answered, that's the historian's route, no incontestable variable. So, I said, Hank, I'm assuming third hand, of course, that Dr. Hammer was born here. I don't know which floor. Have pictures? I'd like to see the tenements. Hank smiled and said, there you go. Remember those flat, marvelous images of depth, revealing reality's limited hope? Blank eyes, stamped on dirty faces, trapped in a time when opportunity was taking chances. Eloquent charity board banter, I said. Ever sat on one? Hank looked at the sliver of river through the buildings again and said, wish we were back then when life's thrill wasn't just zest for danger. It was survival's desperate reach. I can't get over how calm their less fair competitive world appears in photographs. Still, their intensity is what our tensions evolved from. Anxious social relationships, worn on their shoulders, seem less troubled than our happy smiles. He paced in front of me, fitting his feet between the cracks, and said, Julius Hammer's son likes making connections. I don't. It doesn't matter that you disagree with Hammer, because you probably agree with his other lawyers that I refuse to deal with. I'm sloppy. Hammer knew I'd be difficult, so he started with a team led by a nice woman. Then subsequent attorneys offered my last chance. By the looks on all their faces, building capitalism from the bottom up is like digging for dirt on Mars. Yep, I could have taken the money, then got cold feet and be left with something to stake myself to here. But the Hammer and Cycle is a real emblem. He wanted to sell shirts to be more famous. I want the symbol to always mean more than just fabric. I lose my sincerity if profit is my personal bottom line. There was a reason I became a bike messenger, and it wasn't to make a fortune by accident with a millionaire. He still kept a stare on the sliver of East River and said, doubt me, Mr. Trainer? We got nowhere without skepticism. Tell me I create my own frustrations. Work too hard for a lot less was part of the Soviet tradition, wasn't it? I said, you have your own business now. Hank said, just do it, yes. I confess I believe that too. That the poor should break free of the resentment of wealth they're saddled with, the grudge they're accused of, whether defended by cliched, do-gooding Democrats or self-serving Republican criticism. This pair of political platforms we're expected to buy into. That's not thought further through. Convenient toy, liberal conservative. Okay, I said. Try this, Mr. Trainer. Our great California ranch President Reagan labored through a privileged young life during the destituted Depression. The financial lapse that ruined the old and raised the young to worship their bootstraps, even he admits as a sports announcer, wasn't his struggle of the less fortunate. I don't disagree with the individualist ideal. There's just limits to this whole idea that if people are pushed hard enough by circumstances, they'll be better people. He grinned. I'm trying to see how mad I can make you. I said, Hank, you like to dig, but idealism can cast shadows over realistic expectations.